Hello, everybody. Yes, we got the audio working today. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. My name's Tony. Thank you for joining us here on the live stream today. If you're catching us on the replay, well, thanks for taking the time. Here at Star Trek New Worlds, we are a live stream that is bringing to you live every Saturday at 11 Pacific time on Facebook Live, although unfortunately not today, YouTube and Twitch. We're bringing to you the Star Trek New Worlds campaign, a turn-based strategy game that we play using the Federation and Empire rule set as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau, brought to you in full stereo sound here on our various streaming platforms. And of course, the map that we'll show you is produced through Vassal. Vassal is a open source platform tabletop simulator that you will see here in a moment. Please excuse me as I'm swallowing a couple more times. I am recovering from the thing that shall not be named, and I want to thank everybody for all their support and well wishes while me and my family go through that. In today's episode, what will we be talking about? Well, as you saw on the thumbnail, we've got some exciting things, some surprise Carnivon attacks. The Romulans win a key battle, but we'll talk about that in a second. Wormholes appear and disappear. What's going on? We are heading into total war, question mark. Is that what's happening? Is that what's coming down the pipe? Well, we'll talk about that. And of course, the Turn 51 reveal. We'll be discussing all the happenings on our map. But before we get started, let's take a moment and check in with our wonderful community. I see that Mijiman has joined us. Anyone know where this French horn part got sampled from? All the music on this live stream comes to you via Epidemic Sound. Epidemic Sound is a royalty-free subscription music service that you can use for all your live streaming needs. Not that that's a plug or like a paid promotion or anything, but I use Epidemic Sound to be able to provide you all that music. You're into music. Well, check out Epidemic Sound at epidemicsound.com, and you can check out all the music that they have there. Other than that, we've got Paul, we've got Jim, and of course, my quick reference to coffee, highly caffeinated today. And of course, if you feel like helping to support, there we go, I keep getting that wrong. If you feel like helping to support our coffee addiction, then please head over to coffee.com/newworlds, and you can offer some support either with a one-time coffee donation or a monthly contribution for either weekly coffees, or if you want to join our Discord, you can join in on our Discord with one of the tiers offered there. If coffee is not your style, then you can please head over to Patreon if support is on your mind. And we have various tiers there that you can subscribe to and join our Discord as well. Discord is, of course, the platform that we use to be able to talk amongst our players, to be able to share the narrative, the story, the role-playing that goes on, and sort of flush out the interesting story elements that come into play when it comes to playing this war game, but with an RP element. So, hey, Chuck. Chuck is on the house, or on the house. Geez, can't talk today. Chuck is in the house. There we go. And he's joining us here in the chat. Nice to see you, Chuck. I want to give a quick shout out to our latest subscriber, Nick. You can see there, Nick. I'm going to see if I can get that name right. Opidisano? I'm of course butchering that name. I apologize. But Nick, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for joining us. If turn-based strategy, sci-fi things, and of course Star Trek are things that you are interested in, then please consider subscribing to the channel, joining us in our journey to 500 subscribers so that we can unlock the community tab and provide you more content and more info about what's going on in this wonderful campaign. But speaking of the campaign, without further ado, let's get into the story of what's going on. We're going to start our turn reveal today on the Upper East Side, so to speak, of the map. Let's go there now. Now you can see here, this is the Turn 51 map. Turn 51, which is the turn that we will be submitting this week. What we've noticed is there's been a little bit of a slowdown in the progression of turns. Why is that? Well, that's because a whole bunch of our neighbors are deciding to get friendly. There's a lot of fighting going on and a lot of intricacies that are occurring. So as the workload increases for our wonderful GM Daniel, who is in the chat right now, then obviously there's more stuff to do, and getting the battle emails back and forth is a real time suck, so to speak. Because we do this virtually, sort of using the tools of the internet, we have an exchange when it comes to whenever we have a battle. If you're curious about combat and how that works in Federation Empire, then please check out the combat tutorial, which is in the New Worlds playlist. And we talk about how combat works. Now, as far as how we logistically do it in this game, we use email functionally to be able to indicate that there's a battle occurring and provide our intent or our orders on how that battle is to occur from each side, the player that's attacking and the player that's defending, and then we resolve it from there. Now, that back and forth obviously has a bit of a time delay, and that is one of the things that really eats into our ability to progress more turns in a week than otherwise. However, it builds the anticipation, makes you salivate, crave, Jones for that next turn. And that's exactly what we're doing now. Let's get into it. All right, let's focus on Big Red. Big Red, in this case, being the Remans. Like I said, I'm a big Reman fan. I hope that bias doesn't come through too much. But let's just zoom in one more hex here and see what's going on. Okay. As we can see before, we had the exploration occurring in the sort of the upper northwestern corner of their empire. Now we had a convoy, which you can see is now in the midst of building a YBS. I'll just take away the ship so you can see that. It's going to be completed very shortly. So a base being built there, and you can see that we've got what looks like supply 3 perchance, or maybe it's just this particular Orion base is in the way. Either way, you can see that there is a 3 hex difference excuse me, between this base here in the India column and then the one in the Foxtrot column. So they're very close. You can see they've got a number of exploration vessels. These KD-3Es are the exploration or survey cruisers for the Klingons, and of course they're small exploration freighters doing that exploration around that area. We can see as we remove the ships, more resources being found. Very exciting. Oh, I am so sorry. Speaking of resources, let's do the quick around the clock for the west side map. My apologies. Let's start with EP. And we'll put EP right over my head there, right underneath that coffee link in case you're curious to caffeinate this poor man. Coffee, coffee, coffee. Okay. We can see that the Carnivon are at a 33.5 EP for their economy. The Hydrons are at a sweet 36. Sorry for skipping the Gorn. The Gorn are also at 33.5. Again, I love this. The Gorn at one point were the sort of the bottom of the barrel economically, and they have clawed, pun intended, their way into the sort of the heart of the pack. I love it. So the Hydrons are at 36. The ISC 36.5. The Klingons at 37.5. We dropped one, and I'll show you why in a moment. The Remans at a sweet 36. The Romulans at 35.5. So as you can see here, there is a real sort of collection around the sort of the mid-30s, between 33.5, 36, 35.5, 37.5. It's all within sort of the margin of error, which is really, really good. Let's go a quick look at fleet cap as well. Here we can see fleet cap, put it over my head. We'll just widen that a little bit. All right, so we can see that the Carnivon have 42 ship equivalents with a 99-191 split. Now, looks like they might have a cripple or two, but nonetheless, 42 ships, 99 attack. The Federation, excuse me, that's in the other map. So the Gord have 29 ship equivalents, 59-118, which is, about a 50% split, which is interesting. The Hydrons at 44 ship equivalents. Now, notice this. Hydrons have 44 ships. The Carnivon have 42, and their attack and defense is essentially the same. That's probably just based on the composition of tugs, which is something that the Hydrons have quite a few of. The ISC have 30 ship equivalents, and again, in the punching range of this 99 attack, they're at 92-151. So very interesting. A third, basically, of the ships that the Hydrons have, and yet almost par for their attack capacity. I feel like I'm about to sneeze, so I apologize. Klingon, 44 ship equivalents with a 98-151. I'm trying not to sneeze. 44 ship equivalents, 98-151. The Remans, here we are. Remans, 54 ships. They got the biggest fleet in the game with a 163 attack, 216 defense. They are by far the king of the hill when it comes to their fleet. The Romulans at a sweet 42 with an 82-150 split. So as you can see, there is sort of a congestion around the sort of the 90 attack factor, and everyone's floating around the same amount of ships, with the exception of the ISC with a few less and the Remans with a few more. But generally speaking, everyone's got similar fleet sizes, and the attack and defense factors really come to the combination of the ships that they have to choose from, and of course the technologies that they're using, whether it's W, which is the earlier, or the Y later technology, which is currently what's in play. So that looks interesting. Going to take a quick sip. All right. So as we go back to this map, you can see that the let's see if I can slide that over a little bit. So we can see that the exploration continues. We've got this little arm of exploration that's kind of been cut off, but you can see that the Remans are building out their infrastructure with bases and various other things on their way to the west. As the Pet Shop Boys always say, go west. We have convoys, of course, that continue to be sort of strategically located along their border. Looks like it's at the edge of supply, which is 3 hexes. Although in previous live streams, we've theorized that they might have supply 4. We'll see. But either way, it looks like supply 3 is what they're currently planning for. And you can see the convoys are in position to be able to potentially build those bases. Interesting to note that the Remans don't have tugs yet. So not everyone has tugs, but and they're using the convoys as best they can. But excuse me, that's kind of the best that they can do. You can see, of course, a combination of fleet boxes, and we're going to take a look at one fleet in particular, the one that's sitting on their homeworld, which, woo, I love this. Now we know that we know that they are the biggest fleet in the business, but this is just an illustration of that. On their homeworld, they have Cerberus fleet, which is comprised of, oh my goodness, 8 cruisers, which are a 4.6 cruiser at the KD4 plus. The KF4, which is their destroyer, they have 7 of those. They have a total of 10 non-crippled frigates with the KE2, and of course they have 1 crippled there. So that's essentially 11, 7, and 8 respectively. That is just ridiculous, the number of ships that they have parked on their homeworld. Not taking any chances, obviously, and they can deploy that wherever they feel they want to. Particular of note, I don't know if you probably can't see it on your screen. There is a note or a label. It is Hammer Fleet. Don't be a nail. And the fleet commander is MC. Can't touch this. So that's a very interesting. I'm waiting for the Vanilla Ice fleet to show up. It's going to be fantastic. Maybe we'll call it the Ice Baby fleet with Vanilla as the commander. We'll see. Either way, that's very interesting to see what they're doing. Very clearly, they have not committed the bulk of their attack fleet to any one direction, but rather they're keeping it in reserve. So don't be the nail that their hammer is going to fall on, because that's going to hurt. Speaking of hammers and nails, let's go down to the ISC and a couple little things of interest and note. So before, in our previous live stream, we saw that there was a Paravian colony or planet in the upper portion of their territory. You can see here that is no longer the case. They have stomped that Paravian colony, and they now have taken it over. It is a developing planet. You can see by the circle with the dot. So that's a 2 EP planet once it's not devastated, but currently providing 1 EP. Then you have a number of fleets. So we've got Truth, Enforce, Law. Okay, let's just pull up the ISC echelons, because that just makes it easier to deal with. I'm going to put it right here, and I'll just move it a little bit as we need to look at different fleets. So Truth, where are you, Truth? Are you at the bottom? Yes, of course, Truth is at the bottom. Let me slide it over here. So you can see Truth Fleet is a CA, 2 CLs, and a DD that is making its way back from taking that planet. We also have Enforcement Fleet, which is a YCC, so Command Cruiser, CL, and 2 Commando Cruisers. So interesting to note that their YCC is a 4-7 ship. So hard to damage, but not a lot of offensive firepower. Not significantly more than perhaps some of the other ships out there, or other platforms out there. So that's good to note. So we have that, and they are clearly making their way south, whether to the to scatter amongst the different bases for repair, although they don't currently have any crippled ships. But where are they going to go? We shall see. But there's more to talk about. Let's go quickly over to the left side, or towards the center of the galaxy. We can see in this area here, we have a couple things. We have a raider. So what is that? That is a Juggernaut fleet. Juggernaut, just as a quick recap, there is a mysterious, highly advanced faction theorized to be at the center of the map. And they are currently observing the transit of various factions through wormholes and things like that. And they are popping up to sort of enforce, we'll call them traffic cops, I guess. They don't want people going through wormholes, it would seem, based on the narrative that we've been exchanging on our Discord server. And so because of the story that's happening in the background, it would seem that this mysterious, high-tech, maybe AI-controlled faction is looking to clamp down on this trans-dimensional or wormhole travel, and therefore their ships are just popping out of nowhere. Now you can see here what's happened is, in this hex, normally what happens, they will pop into a sector of space through their wormhole, which is what's happened here, a one-way wormhole for them. Although for them, they can transit or retreat through that gravity well. The reason we use this iconography is to indicate that us as players can't travel through it. So they've popped into that hex, but you'll notice that they're not in that hex. They're in the hex next to it. Why is that? They reacted into that hex because something happened or a ship was moved from the ISC. Now that's important because that indicates the order of precedence in initiative. In this game, because it's turn-based, we have a set of initiative that is based on the size of your economy. Your economy, the lower it is, puts you further at the front of initiative. If you have the lowest economy in the game, you go first, and then second and third and so on. So the highest economy, or the biggest economy rather, goes last. In the event of a tie, for example, it was whoever was first. Whoever was first in initiative previously remains first until they pass the other person that they're tied with, and then they take over, kind of thing. So if I am tied with the Hydrons for second, let's say, in initiative, and then the Hydrons all of a sudden go to 1 point more in economy than me, then I go before them, whereas before maybe they were going before me. That kind of thing. Hopefully that's simple enough. Either way, what this means is that the Juggernauts go first in initiative. They showed up, then the ISC moved, and then the Juggernauts reacted into a hex. If you want to know about reaction movement, go check out the reaction movement tutorial in the New Worlds playlist. We talk about it there. So the Raider fleet moved into that hex, and away we go. But Tony, you say, why are you worried about these Juggernaut fleets? What could they bring to the table? Now, I apologize for this being so large. Let's try and slim it down. So let's just take a quick look at the ships in here. Again, we, as player factions, are currently right around the Y era, meaning that it's sort of like out of the 4 tiers of technology that we currently have available in this game, 1, 2, 3, 4, GW being the highest level 4 tech, and W being the first, we're at basically stage 2 at Y tech. These guys are at GW or level 4. Give you a sense of what the difference is. They have currently 7 ships in this fleet. A cruiser, a light cruiser, 2 destroyers, and 3 frigates. Now, this cruiser, CA, is a straight 12. 12 attack, 12 defense. Put that in context to the dreadnoughts that other factions are building. For example, the Romulan dreadnought's one of the best in the game right now. It is a 7-8 ship. 7 attack, 8 defense. This cruiser is a 12 straight. 12 attack, 12 defense. So it cleans the clock of that dreadnought. Also, you'll notice it has this plus icon here. If you can see that. That plus indicates that it is a mauler. A mauler is a special ability within the rules, and we will maybe create a video around that once we see more maulers kind of enter the game. Maulers are a kind of unit available to certain factions. The Remans will be able to get them, Romulans. And basically what it is it allows them to be able to concentrate fire on a target. Normally, directed damage, and we talk about directed damage in the combat tutorial. Again, check out the playlist for that. Directed damage is usually done at either 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, meaning you have to do 3 or 2 points of damage to inflict 1 point of actual damage on the target. You have to generate 3 or 2 points of damage to inflict 1 point of damage. Maulers go 1-to-1, meaning for every point they generate, they inflict that point of damage. Now, there are some restrictions around that, but they are a highly effective unit. And in this case, 12 points of damage directed on a target can take out most ships in one shot. There's some ways to protect yourself for that, but we'll talk about that in a specific tutorial around maulers. In addition to that, they've got their light cruiser, which is a straight 8 ship, which is more akin to some of the dreadnoughts that we have in the game. Destroyers, 2 of them, which are straight 6s, and then they have these frigates, which are straight 5s. One of the other sort of abilities that a Juggernaut has, and you only sort of realize this once you fight them, is they have a special ability when it comes to combat where their non-crippled frigates can soak up 3 damage before you can actually do any damage to them. It's a shield regeneration technology thing. And so basically what it means is you have to generate 3 points of damage. Then any points of damage you start generating after that start sort of being allocated towards crippling the unit. It's a huge pain in the butt and makes Juggernauts, this particular fleet, a real hard nut to crack. And of course, the ISC are dealing with that right now. You can see that the only sort of fleets and stuff that they have around them is basically integer. That's probably not the integrity fleet. There we go. So integrity fleet is right up here with a light cruiser and a prime team. That's not going to be enough, obviously. So we'll see what happens with this Juggernaut fleet, where they go, what they do, and how they do it, because understandably, this fleet is dangerous. So that's something that the ISC are dealing with. However, that's not the whole story. Let's take a look at the Hydran border as we prepare to discuss the Hydrans. So you'll notice, we talked about this many times before, talking about the base build-up distribution. And what you'll notice along the Hydran border as you look here is there's a lot of unexplored hexes. And those unexplored hexes create this sort of barrier to prevent ships from going back and forth. Basically, prevents you from getting attacked. This was something that was raised on the Carnivon Klingon border, that the Carnivons were constantly or continually exploring the hexes. Now, what we can see here is that there's 2 specific tugs on these YBSs. Now, those YBSs, I believe, pre-existed. So what are they there for? Excuse me. And there's also Providence Fleet, which I don't see here. Oh, there it is, of course. Providence Fleet. So let's slide this up here. Providence Fleet, you can see here, has 3 YCLs, 2 YDDs, and 2 YFFs. So not the biggest, baddest fleet in the world, but keep in mind that the ISC light cruiser, which is obviously what those YCLs are, it's a 4-5 ship. It's pretty decent. That is almost the same as the Hydran cruiser. Their DDs are 3-4s, which are pretty decent, and their YFFs, well, they're just 2-3s. That's standard basically for everybody else. But That's basically almost the equivalent of 3 cruisers and then support ships to sort of put on that border. What do the Hydrons have on that side? Nothing. They have a gold fleet there. We'll talk about that in a moment when we go over the Hydrons. But yeah, that's interesting. So why do I bring this up? Because there's no one for the ISC to target, and there has been this sort of ongoing pot stirring activity, which has been going on in the background with regards to the Klingon, Carnivon, and Romulan conflict. We'll get to that once we get to the lower west side. But as we're still in the upper west side, let's focus on the ISC and the Hydrons. So when the players are concerned, from a role-playing perspective, there has been some dialogue back and forth. I'll be honest, I don't have full transparency on that because a lot of this communication happens either in voice chat on Discord, and I wasn't there to see it or hear it, and or email. So when we get to the chat here in a moment, we'll ask our players to see what the exchange was, or what has the exchange been like between the ISC or the Hydron player. Maybe there's none of it, and I'm just making this up. Who knows? But I have a feeling there's been a little bit of commentary back and forth about doing this and doing that and various other things. I can tell you that the Hydrons, not unlike other geopolitical powers in history, have been dipping their fingers into everybody else's business, specifically the Klingons, in trying to stir conflict between the Carnivons, the Klingons, and various other things. I'll get to that once we get down to the Klingon part of the map, but it's interesting to see that there has previously been no military buildup on the border between the ISC and the Hydrons, and now there starts to be, including these tugs, which telegraph to me an intent to perhaps build up a little more robust of a defensive wall, we'll call it, against Hydron assault. Of course, in addition to that, you've got a ton of these Orions, but we'll get to that in a moment. All right, let's take a look at the Hydron theocracy. As we scroll down, there's a couple of interesting things just off the top. Now, I tease the Hydron player, Jim, who's currently in the chat. I tease him all the time about basically it seems as though Hydrons are renting space from the Orions because there's so many Orions in Hydron space. They have, it looks like 5 different bases. One is a YDK. They have a plethora of ships, and they're causing all sorts of business inside the Hydron Empire. Again, I tease about it being the sort of the hub or the center of scum and villainy in the galaxy, and there's all sorts of interesting things happening here. Interesting to note, just kind of prove my point, I said there were 5. It looks like there are 6 bases, and one of his fleets is just parked on one of them. Obviously, they're playing nice and getting along. The question I always ask is, how is the Hydron player using Orions in the game? How is he interacting, role-playing? What is the interaction there? Regardless of what you may or may not think, it would certainly seem by the evidence on the map that the Hydrons are playing nice with the Orions and they're using them to some effect. Does that effect negatively impact other players? We shall see. Let's focus on where those fleets are. Now, we've already talked about how the Hydron player tends to put like one ship in a fleet box. Let's just take a look, for example, Platinum Fleet here. This is just to illustrate a point. I think it's in the metal. Is it in metal? That's another thing. I hate the Hydron Fleet boxes. Oh, I just looked at metal. Pardon me. Shiny? There we go. Okay. So Platinum Fleet is right here over top this Orion base. And you can see here that it's titled Behemoth. It is a YDN or Wire Dreadnought with a prime team with a 6.8. So it was previously on this base down here. Excuse me, on the border with the Carnivon, and 1, 2, 3, 4 moved its way back up here. Now, why is that? Not sure, but dreadnoughts with a prime team are really good at exploring. Maybe that's what he's going to start using that for, and we'll get to why that might be in a minute. Other than that, we've got First Fleet let's see here, Hydron First Fleet. Again, the use of fleet boxes. We've got 2 ships in First Fleet, and they're just sitting there on this YBS. We've got New Fleet and Royal Fleet. So let's say New Fleet, which has a collection of 5 Vols, so 5 frigates. And as well, we have Royal Fleet, reserves, maybe logistics. Logistics, no. Always frustrating. Noble fleets, maybe. There we go. Okay, so we got Royal. You can see a Royal has a YCC with a GRN, so that's a Y-era command cruiser and a Y-era cruiser with 2 frigates. So they're kind of making their way down here. So I'm not sure whether they're collecting around the Orion pirate base, or whether they're making their way to the border with the Carnivons. Either way, they're in this area. Other than that, we have Tungsten and Iridium Fleet, which look like they're doing different kinds of exploration. Cobalt and Xenon, second, third. Basically, it looks as though the vast majority of Hydron fleets are conducting various kinds of exploration to try and push to the center of the map. Now, from my perspective, being sort of down here on the map, it looks like there's a push sort of southwest towards me. But to be realistic, the distribution of ships is just based on where the opportunities are in exploration. They explore Hex, they move in that direction, and so on. It's just sort of taking advantage of what they find. Other than that, we can see that there's a number of fleets sort of scattered around his territory. And let's take a quick look at the Old Colony Squad. Oh, Old Colony Squadron is most likely those musketeers. Yes, it is. And then, of course, we've got, I want to take a quick look at Gold Fleet, because Gold Fleet is sitting over this gravity well / wormhole that was where the Romulans came out. Now, interesting to note that the Romulan WSN, which was the ship that came through that gravity well, is all the way down here, making its way towards maybe this wormhole. Not sure. But we can see that the Gorn have popped in. Oh, you can't see that exactly. Let me just slide this over. So right here, whoop, there we go. So right here, you can see that there is a wormhole with a Gorn ship that's popped out, and that is potentially where that Hydron-controlled Romulan ship is going. We also have the Tholian ship, which came through this wormhole over here, still detained over, or being towed, I guess, maybe, in this area. And nothing really much happening there. So very interesting to see sort of what's going on the Hydron front. Again, when we look at the total fleet cap, they got lots of ships. They've got lots of combat potential. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be a concentration of any combat force in any one particular area. What we do see is what looks like, or seems to be, exploration on the fringes, which makes total sense, but no reinforcement along the borders, or the sort of key access points, which would be along the border here with the Carnivon or the border with the ISC, with the exception, of course, the pirates. So that's essentially what we see here. And again, this base distribution, let's take away the ships for a sec. Base distribution along the border. I mean, there's a tug in this hex right here, but 3 hexes between bases. There's not a lot of sort of reinforcement there. Again, same thing along the border with the north with the ISC. But we do see the 2 hex, and the reason why the 2 hexes is because of reaction movement. The bases have EW. They have special sensors. They can do extended reaction range. Again, if you want to know about reaction movement, check out that tutorial in the playlist on the channel. But you can see that there's a very more significant concentrated effort to do the 2 hex base construction methodology as we sort of move further to the center of the galaxy and sort of closer towards threats. Yeah, very interesting to see. All right. Let's take a moment and switch over to the chat. check in on how all our players are doing as we have now finished the Upper East Side. All right, taking a look at the current chat. Let's take a look. We've got, of course, Chuck showed up. We've got Bill Linton has shown up. Okay, so my lord, Chuck says, when I see this map, I will be raising hell. That Orion TDK? YDK. Oh, raise about that Orion YDK. There we are. Serious infestation they have there. Absolutely. He does. He's a big tease, Jim says about me, of course. Dell, it's true. Orions have quite a bad Hydron problem. So true. I knew that they were, I knew that maybe them Hydrons were low lies, but this is disgusting. Platinum Fleet discovered yet another pirate base. Lovely. And Chuck saying, yeah, okay, whatever, Jim. Tholians are being entertained at Gray Base Alpha. Gray Base, right. A gray site, right, gray site. And Jim, what about Mercury Fleet, Tony? All right, let's go take a look at Mercury Fleet. What's in Mercury Fleet? He says, metal fleets. Is it going to be in metal? No. Dear. Hydron. Would it be under shiny? There it is. Okay, so Mercury Fleet. Mercury Fleet. Oh, of course you can't see that. Let's go right back here real quick. So Mercury Fleet has a YCC, a GRN, and 2 frigates. So again, let's go up here. Where is Mercury Fleet? You'll have to excuse me if my, I'm assuming it's HG. My periodic table of elements knowledge is not obviously up to par. Let's assume that it's HG. So he's got a YCC, a GRN, and 2 vols. Okay. And then so he's moving that down, up, somewhere. It is in close proximity to the homeworld. So basically, when we're talking about fleets and ships in the Hydron Navy, we see a large concentration of frigates. Obviously, that was what was used to be able to stomp the Klingons, that minor Klingon planet at Armageddon, and the kind of peppering of YCCs and CCs, or sorry, YCCs and CAs in the various fleets. So what I would call them great patrol fleets. Not necessarily great war fleets, because, of course, we've seen some of the war fleets as we get down to the Carnivon here in a second. But, yeah, very interesting to see how that's sort of going to evolve going forward. All right. HG is Mercury Fleet. Yeah. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's take a look at we're going to start with the Klingons and work our way out. And basically because the Klingons end up being the focus of the sort of lower west side story. So what's going on here? Let's go to the map and I will sort of explain. As per the thumbnail, we saw that the Carnivon came out of nowhere and attacked the Klingons. Now, before this had happened, we had seen some sort of build up to that, in that there was 2 large fleets that made their way to the border with the Klingons. There was a discussion about the conflict between the Romulans and the Klingons by the Carnivon. Outrage and great concern around what was happening on that border. Okay. And then a discussion back and forth that as the Klingons were upgrading a base that was in this hex where you see this concentration of ships, we were upgrading a base there, a YBS to a YDK, because there was concern about not only was there an Orion base that we destroyed because it was doing bad things, but there's this minor faction that's here with a YDK, so it seemed prudent to be able to build a YDK and build some facilities there. The Carnivon player took that as to be a very provocative action to build a YDK there, and without any sort of discussion, negotiation, or anything like that, decided to go in and stomp it. And as you can see, there's quite a concentration of ships here. So let's just take a quick look and see what's there. The Carnivons have Den Fleet, which is this group of ships. And they also have, I believe, home. Yes, home fleet. So Carnivon home fleet. Now, I don't want us to get overly excited, but this isn't a small number of ships. In home fleet alone, we have 2 command cruisers, which, again, not great on the offensive firepower, but, you know, they can soak up a lot of damage. They're 3/7 ships. The YCAs, of which he has 5 of them in home fleet, they're 3/6 ships. These YDBs are drone bombardment ships, which they can use in a certain way, especially against fixed targets, which he's got 3 of them here, and they are 3/4 ship. 2 destroyers. How many? I think it's 7. No, 6 YFFs, and then a combination of prime teams. Now, so we had 6 YFFs. You add 2 from Den Fleet, that makes that 9. They got a commando ship here, which is looks like it's a cruiser hull, I'm going to guess. A couple more DDs, making that total round out to 5. A couple more CAs, rounding out that total number to 7. And then a YCB, which I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I'm assuming, based on the numbers, it's a drone bombardment cruiser. So drone bombardment cruiser, other drone bombardment ships, and then in addition to those fleets, he's got another drone bombardment ship, a YFF, a YDD, and another YDD. So essentially, we've got something akin to, what is it, 5, 6, 7. So we've got close to 10 frigates, 7 destroyers, a combination of 4 drone bombardment ships of various types. We've got a combination of 7 cruisers and then 2 command cruisers. Long story short, that's a lot of ships, and there was no way that a little base with a couple of destroyers defending it was going to be able to hold off that assault. They attacked. It's very much a one-way fight, and we backed off. The Klingons, that is. Nothing to do. There's no way we were going to win that fight, and so the only option was to back out. One important thing to note when it comes to retreats and bases, when you have a base, bases can cover a retreat and prevent pursuit battles. So again, if you want to know about pursuit battles, that's discussed in our combat tutorial. Check out the playlist for more information on that. But essentially, when you're fighting a battle, if you have a base in the hex, the base can provide you cover as the ships retreat. And that just means that those ships effectively and successfully retreat without pursuit, and the base soaks up all the damage and gets destroyed, which is what happened here. No approach battle was fought. There was no real attempt to be able to engage them because it was such a one-sided fight, and we just backed out. Now you can see here that the Fleet Joint Task Force Bravo, or it's Beta here, moved back to this base, and we have some other ships here. So basically everybody backed out and tried to run away, and yeah, retreat. Now, what's interesting about that is when you look at, let's take away the ships for a sec, when you look at the bases that are in there, you can see that the Carnivons are currently upgrading one of their bases into a YDK. That tells me that they are expecting that this will be a more substantial engagement than just a one-shot deal. They're building bases, they're building YDKs so that they can support repair and a more sort of sustained attack. So this is not a one-and-done scenario. We're going to see more Carnivon attacks on Klingon bases and various other things as we go forward, which, to be fair, from my perspective, sucks. Let's be clear. Now, let's look at the Carnivon space real quick. We can see that we've got a W-era dreadnought, which has shown up on the on the Carnivon homeworld. What's interesting, interesting to note about that? One, it's a 3/7 ship, which is the same as their YCC. WDNs or W-era ships only move 3, so it's going to take a while to get to the front, maybe about 2 or 3 turns. Again, it can only move 3. Obviously, it's got a prime team here. You notice that essentially the entire Carnivon fleet is on the front with the Klingons. Everything they have is in this little pipeline right here. And they've got a couple of ships in the background here, a tug, 2 frigates, and a drone bombardment ship. Basically, they're focusing everything on this attack, or sort of this assault on the Klingon Empire. So it's very interesting. Another little thing to note on the border here was this planet here, which was a Paravian planet last turn. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a what's called a Messiah event occurred. Now, what that means is that, in this case, a fleet of pilgrims, we'll call them, with attack attack auxiliary ships, basically attacked the planet and destroyed the base. The 2 frigates destroying it and conquered it. Now you can see that they have a crippled ship there, and let's just flip that ship so you can see what it looks like when it's not crippled. So this is a sort of like a raider ship, and it's a 4-5, normally a 4-5 ship. And you can see what's interesting here is it's an M era ship, an auxiliary battle cruiser M. So it's a more advanced level of technology than what the Klingons have. And so they had more than this that attacked that planet, destroyed it, took it, and, well, now they're there. So before this turn, the Hydrants had been threatening the Klingons about that planet. Apparently, that planet is something that they refer to as a nexus, a religious or some kind of alternate dimension thing that is a focal point for their religion. This Messiah event, I'm going to assume, based on the narrative that was generated by the Hydrants, focused on that and liberated the Nexus from Paravian control based on that. So a bunch of religious fanatics told me, don't take out that planet because we consider it a holy site. Then another group of religious fanatics did exactly that thing and took the planet. So how are we going to deal with that going forward? I don't know. We'll see. But nonetheless, it made it a much easier target to take one way or the other. We'll see what happens. Religious fanatics versus religious fanatics. I mean, how do you splice that up? I don't know. We'll see. But let's continue on. So we've got the Carnivon. Basically, the focus of the Carnivon attack is me. And they have everything they have on the border with me. This will be very interesting. All right, let's go to the Romulan border. So here is where things get interesting. Oh, before I go to the Romulan border, let's just quickly address this. In the bottom here, you can see that a wormhole has appeared. A wormhole that appeared from the Federation, and a Federation frigate came through. We'll discuss that when we discuss the Federation turn as well. But long story short, they just came through a wormhole. There's a wormhole that's... Boom! I missed that note. I'll have to go back and check it out. Thank you very much for the coffee donation. Very much appreciate it. Excuse me as I cough. Right, so the Federation is here. They've entered Klingon space, and they've asked for help. Klingons have offered to help them, and they're going to escort them to one of these bases, and then we'll see what happens from there. Hopefully, Federation will play nice with us because they play nice with everybody else, and we'll see how that goes going forward. All right. So along the Romulan border, we had Klingons. Basically, the Romulans took this planet. They took the planet Nepal in Foxtrot 44. It was a planet that had a bunch of crippled ships from the previous attack where we had attacked this YDK and had not crippled it. So we had attacked it. There had been a bunch of battles that occurred. And long story short, when the Romulans attacked us, they counterattacked. They were able to take this planet. All the ships that were basically there have retreated to these 2 YDKs, which are on the border here. I'll just take away the ships so you can see that. I have 2 YDKs here to be able to support the repair function. And basically we have a large fleet of ships on the border right here. Second fleet, which is a Romulan fleet of ships, and we'll show that to you right here. Second Legion. So you can see that here. They have their Dreadnought, which is the Y-era Vulture, a Kingbird, which is a command cruiser for them, a Y-era Warbird, which is kind of like a cruiser. It's kind of in between a cruiser and a light cruiser. 2 crippled Warbirds and a crippled frigate. So we have those ships there. What's of particular note here is that if the Romulans have supply 3, then this planet is out of supply. And that the beginning of this turn, they can draw supply from the planet. But what does that mean? It means that the planet, which produces 1 EP of income, isn't sort of connected to the greater Romulan economy. From a player perspective, that means that your economy, from the EP calculation, your economy goes up, which means your initiative order might change, but you don't actually get to spend that money because it's stuck on the planet. If you have a functional fixed supply grid that connects to that planet, then you can get that money. But if you don't, you're kind of out of luck. So we can see here that they've got a fleet of ships that are there. They have a number of crippled ships that obviously, these are ships that encountered the ships that were sort of in this area, and they had retreated out of various hexes. And then we have ships that basically have come up to this YDK. Now this YDK, as I remove the ships real quick, you will see that it is crippled. Why is that? In my turn, I contracted a prime team to go and do a specific mission called Sabotage Mission to cripple that base. They were successful, and because I'd already done 3 SIDS or 3 incremental damage amounts or SIDS to that base, once it hit 4 SIDS, it cripples. Now that it's crippled, the big thing about that is that it cannot repair ships. This was a real sort of bane to my existence in the sense that it allowed the Romulans a lot of repair capacity so they can send their ships, fight me, repair them, and, you know, keep a fresh group of ships attacking me, especially since they have initiative over me. They go first. Now that that's crippled, that's not the case. So their SIDS, or Starbase Incremental Damage System, has 4 damage per SIDS. So they have basically 2 SIDS left on this crippled base before it's destroyed. This base now has to have a tug sent to repair it, or maybe potentially a convoy. But either way, there's a lot that needs to go in to repair that before it can conduct its own repair of other ships. And so we'll just see how that goes and how that sort of goes going forward. But if it's possible to maintain that as a crippled base, then that will seriously impair the ability for the Romulans to repair and keep a steady supply of ships sort of in my face. Also, another thing to note, when you repair ships at a base, it's at a sort of a half price, in the sense of for every damage point you repair, it only costs you half a point of EP, or $0.50. When it comes to repairing a starbase, it's 1 for 1. So when you send a convoy or YDK, sorry, not a YDK, a tug to repair it, it is 1 EP per point of damage, and there's only so much damage that you can repair. A tug can only repair 2 SIDS worth of damage, or basically 8 points of damage, and a convoy can only repair 4. So in the context of this game, there's a certain pace or speed at which you can repair things, and it's going to be that's going to be a significant factor in the fight on this border. So as we can see here, lots of ships on the border here, lots of crippled ships that you can't, well, let's see here. So Joint Task Force Gamma and Joint Task Force Alpha. Let's pull those up real quick. All the players can see this information as well, so we're not hiding anything here. So we have 2 cruisers and 3 destroyers that were crippled, and that's Gamma. So let's pull up Alpha, and then Alpha has, again, 2 cruisers and 3 destroyers that were crippled. So you have a significant number of ships that have been crippled as a result of the sort of back and forth battle that's occurred here. How that's going to sort of evolve going forward, we shall see. But the fact that I've got those 2 YDKs there to be able to repair things, huge advantage, or, you know, benefit for me. We'll see how that goes. And so basically, the Klingons are getting squeezed on both sides. On the upper side of the map, up there, you can see that the Carnivons are pushing in and they are winning without a doubt. Hence that knockout punch in the thumbnail. It's going to hurt. It's going to continue to hurt. It's going to suck. The Romulans, on the other hand, are putting up a great fight, and there's a lot of give and take here. And without a doubt, let's be really clear here, the Romulans, I would argue, are winning this fight right now. They are gaining ground, gaining territory, pushing the Klingons back. They are winning that fight. Not something I want to say, but it's, it's reality. All right, slide across. Another thing to note, we were talking about wormholes appearing and disappearing. The the Reman E1 that came through a wormhole that was down here in the corner, that wormhole has disappeared, stranding the Reman ship on the other side of the galaxy with no way home. So we shall see what happens and what the Romulans do or don't do about this particular little ship, what the Remans decide to do with it, where they decide to send it. It's kind of isolated. It can't do much. I mean, what are you going to do with a crippled W-era frigate? We'll see. Other than that, we can see that from a general perspective, the Romulans, again, like the Carnivons, are throwing almost everything they have at the Klingons on the eastern side of their border, with their exploration fleets continuing to conduct exploration. You can see Imperial and West Fleet just recently discovered new resources. Hence, new resources, their economy keeps going up. They gained 3 EP this turn, which is important. 1 from Nepal and 2 from those 2 resources there, and they're continuing to explore. All right, I'm going to switch my head to the other side as we discuss the Gorn. All right, Big Bad Gorn. Incidentally, you might have heard the Red Cross or the I think it's called Red Crescent. The Red Crescent, yeah. So these are humanitarian organizations that provide relief to war-torn areas. The Gorn have their own their own iteration of this. It is called the Scarlet Scale, and the Scarlet Scale has been talking about providing humanitarian sort of assistance to the residents of Nepal with all the conflict that's happening over that planet. So I found that quite amusing. What's going on in the Gorn? Well, we have the work happening on the YBS that you can see here. Basically, they're conducting research and development on the wormhole. You can see that they've got they've got Home Fleet, Fourth Fleet. Let's take a quick look at some of the Gorn fleets, because I know the Gorn have been beefing up their military. Okay, so Gorn Home Fleet. There we go. Okay, so that's not what I want to do. Let's move that over here. So we can see that the Gorn Home Fleet has a YDN, 2 light cruisers, 6 destroyers, and 2 frigates, which is looking good. We have the mobile fleet, Gorn Mobile Fleet. Where's Mobile Fleet? Is it under name fleets? There we go. So Mobile Fleet here has a lot of W-era ships, basically a whole bunch of W-era ships. This improved battleship, an improved W-era cruiser, destroyer, all these things. So this is a W-era fleet that's basically looking to support and provide a little bit of security for that planet that's there. And of course, the Diplomat was improving, the happiness level, which increases the economic output. With a developing planet, not so much. There's no economic improvement for an improved attitude. But once it grows to a minor planet, then instead of 3 EP, it'll provide 3.5. So that's good. We have 4th and Expeditionary Fleet. Let's take a quick look at those. We can see 4th, again, is just another survey ship or a survey, like a survey fleet. And Expeditionary, Gorn, Expeditionary. Oh, is it under... Let's see here. Alliance, Reserves. Oh, Expeditionary. And we can see Expeditionary is... excuse me. The thing that shall not be named won't go away. It's just the leftovers of that. Okay, we have a large exploration freighter and basically a WR frigate. So we can see that the concentration of ships is certainly on their home fleet. They continue. You can see a couple more DDs and CLs, and they basically are steady and true. The Gorn are continuing to explore right around the edges. You can see they've discovered this new resource here. They've got bases that they've built out to be able to increase their supply and reach. And slowly but surely, the Gorn continue to push out the borders of their territory in sort of a friendly way. Oh, one fleet I forgot to take a look at. Let's take a look at Third Fleet. There we go. So we can see Third Fleet again, one of those exploration fleets. You've got an exploration ship with an escort and a prime team, and they're just doing their thing. So that's great. Fantastic. That is looking good. Let me take a quick sip of something else. And whoa, I see a whole bunch of chat. Let's dive into it. Let me take a quick sip, and then we'll get into it. All right. Whoa. Okay, so we're going to pick up where Dell left off. Take the planet. Dell is very excited. Dale Davis. Dale, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the live stream. Where do I get information on everything you guys are doing here and learn how to play? Chuck seems to... you spend it, but only at the planet. Oh, this is the discussion around the partial supply grid. Bill says, generates a partial supply grid around the planet. Chuck is saying, or transport it to the main grid. You can't transport it to the main grid unless you had a theater transport, which could transport EP or tug, and then you could move it to a base. Basically, you'd have to transport it to either a base or homeworld to be able to use it in the main grid. So, yeah. Yes. Jim, we are in the early stages of getting another game going, Dale. So responding to Dale's comment about how do we get involved. Yeah, so if you are interested in getting involved in this campaign or in the games that we're playing, the current campaign that you're seeing here on the map or that we're showing to you on the live stream, that campaign is sort of up and running. We have our established players. We have the maximum sort of amount that we can handle. We are in the midst of working on another campaign. Again, it's in the ingredients phase. We haven't actually done any execution yet. We're planning that out. And when the time comes to be able to call out players, boom, Daniel Eastland, thank you for the donation. We have a new campaign in the works, but if you want to participate, get involved, and get sort of in on what's happening here, couple things. One, if you are a supporter of this channel, i.e. a Patreon and or a coffee supporter, then you get first shot, first crack. It's only fair to be able to participate and be a player in the new campaign that we're starting up. We will also be offering or announcing rather that we are recruiting or looking for players when we're ready to pull the trigger on that campaign. We're not there yet, but when we do, we will announce that on the channel. And when we do that, if you're subscribed and have alerts enabled, you'll be able to see that notification come to you and you'll be able to get in on the new campaign. It's a first come, first serve scenario, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and have alerts turned on so that you can see it when it happens. Of course, you can always join us here on the live stream every Saturday, and you'll be able to see us discuss that as it evolves. So, yeah, if you're a subscriber and a supporter of the channel, then you get first crack at it. And of course, again, first come, first serve. We're going to be probably having about 10 players total, so we'll see how that goes. But again, it's in the early stages. We will announce it when we're ready to sort of bring that to all of you, and we'll let you all have the opportunity to join. All right, let's go back into the comments. We use Federation and Empire rules with some homebrew. So this is just Jim talking about sort of how we use things, how we play the game. And sounds like some old diplomacy games I used to play. Yes, yes, yes. There's a lot of sort of that going on here. Maybe time for a negotiated peace with the G line as a border with the Romulans, giving Carnivons some concessions on that border. Jim says, let's see, on the G line? Definitely not. Good analogy, Dale. Somewhat similar, I guess. Right. So, yes, the Klingons have been trying to negotiate peace with the Romulans, and the Romulans are not necessarily interested. We'll see how that kind of continues to go forward. And the Carnivons certainly are not interested in any negotiated peace with us. They have made it very clear they want to crush, kill, and destroy. So we'll see how that all goes as we go forward here. It's going to be very interesting as things evolve. Let's take a moment and quickly go to the Upper West Side. The Upper West Side of the map and discuss what is going on with the other three that are in the game. Now, quick note here: because the Federation has shown up in Klingon space, there's a potential for us to be able to swap maps, swap navigational data, and if we do, then we will. If we swap navigational data, then this will marry the maps together. Once we, as Klingons, have all that information, we share it with everybody else, and the map will merge, which will be very, very interesting. That'll change some role-playing elements in the game as people know where people are. So let's take a quick look. I'll zoom in one more here. We're going to start with the Lyrans and what's going on. Now, we know from the previous live streams we discussed about the Romulans. The Romulans are in this area sort of right above my head. And we know that they've explored into the Bravo line. Now, from a role-playing perspective, we don't want to metagame, so the Lyrans are continuing to conduct their exploration as per. You can see they're pushing to the northeast with nearly their entire exploration force. And they have interesting combination of fleet. So their homeworld is here in the whiskey column, and they don't have a lot of supply. But you can see here either one of two things. Either this convoy, which I expect this is the case, the convoy is providing extended supply. So here's an interesting thing. So the convoy is providing extended supply to these exploration ships. Here's an interesting note. We were just talking about partial supply grids when it came to that planet Nepal and how it's outside of the supply grid. Let me take away the ships real quick. If the Lyrans only have supply 3, this resource doesn't contribute to their economy. In fact, arguably, it shouldn't be claimed because whereas planets are self-sustaining, resources are not. And so if it's outside your supply range, you can't really use it. You can discover it without a doubt, but you can't sort of claim it because you have no supply network to get to it. So what that means is either A, this is just a mistake, or 2, the Lyrans have supply 4. And if they have supply 4, then they have no problem connecting to that resource. Also, if they have supply 4, that would mean that makes this convoy not providing extended supply, but rather ready to build a base here. And this cruiser is getting supply either from this or this base. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would argue that mistakes, not counting any potential mistakes, it would seem as though the Lyrans have supply 4. So we shall see how that goes. Other than that, we can see that on the wormhole that they share with the Carnivons, we have, again, the research and development team, a YBS on Farstar's fleet. Now, Farstar's fleet, when we checked on it before, was nothing crazy. It was just sort of like a, what do you want to call it? A door stopper fleet. So we can see here, basically that's what it is. It has a bunch of WR ships, a couple of YDDs, and basically it's just to stop anything from coming through there that might be crippled and just kind of pop it a little bit. We have Bloodstar fleet on the border with the Federation with a base that's sort of somewhat removed, which is interesting. You can see commercial convoys are going back and forth. So there's obviously some good exchange and trade between the Lyrans and the Federation. That is very interesting to see. I'm going to slide this over a little bit. And we can see on the Federation side, they've got some, the Lyrans have a CA diplomat and a prime team on their homeworld, the Federation homeworld. And so there's good stuff happening there. We can see on the border here with the, let's just take away the ships real quick. We can see on the border with the Federation is really building up a more robust base network, which is good to see, along the Lyran line, we'll call it. And they're definitely, sticking to that 2-hex support network. You can see that even goes down to the south, with the exception of sort of these odd base building, odd bases that were built. But generally speaking, we have the 2-hex pattern that's supporting the sort of the base network. Bring back the ships real quick. So we can see that the exploration strategy of prime teams on cruisers is continuing to be executed on. We have the Feds with their 10th and 9th fleet. 10th fleet. So again, cruiser with a prime team with an escort frigate. And 9th fleet, same thing. So again, cruisers, prime teams continuing to explore. Oh, one thing I forgot, which is the EP and fleet cap. So now that we can see these guys on the map, let's take a quick look. We've got the Lyrans at 32.5, the Federation at 33, and the Tholians at 38. The Tholians are now the economic leader in the game, with the Klingons just behind them. And the Federation and the Lyrans are both a little bit, they're sort of in that sort of concentrated bubble around the 35 mark, we'll call it, but they're obviously on the lower end of that. So let's take a quick look at their fleet caps, see if that's changed much. We can see here that the Lyrans continue to have, so they have 36 ship equivalents, knowing that they are near the Romulans with like 50 odd ships. This is interesting. They have 79, 165 attack to defense factor. Again, the Romulans have like 160 or something. They have well over 100 and 150 on the attack factor, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out. The Federation have a 64-108 split, so again, low offensive firepower and only 25 ships. The Tholians have 36 ships, again, lower on the ship number, and a 51-37 split. So what's interesting about this is there's two worlds effectively in this game, East and West. Ridiculous how it sort of mirrors reality sometimes. In the East, we have, in the West, I should say, we have lower economic values with the exception of the Tholians, lower fleet counts, ship numbers, and offensive firepower. So basically it's a less conflict-oriented area. They're more sort of collaborative and cooperation focused. On the west side of the map, it's the opposite. You have on the bottom or the lower west side, you have nothing but conflict. Romulans, Klingons, Carnivons, oh my, everyone's fighting. The Hydrons, again, from a political perspective, from the role-playing aspect, stirring that pot, trying to get things going. The Romulans, the biggest massive fleet in the game. There's a lot more potential for things to pop off on the west side than the east side. Correction, east side versus the west side. Oh my God. The lower east side of the map, thank you, is where all the conflict is. The upper west side of the map is where things are peaceful and tranquil. So, my goodness, I'm getting my east and west all mixed up here. Okay, let's get back to La Fédération. Federation, as we talked about, the majority of their ships focused on exploration. They're trying to build out that economy, trying to push their borders. And of course, we've got the building of bases along the Lyran border. Basically, with the offensive firepower that we see on this side of the map, the Federation are very well positioned to keep themselves secure. And of course, you can see that they have a not insignificant fleet on the border with the Tholians. It's not by any means threatening, but it's not nothing. Interesting to note here, though, that they have two cruisers that are crippled. I'd be curious, Bill, what happened there? I'm going to jump into those comments in a moment. Let me finish off with the Tholians, and then we're going to jump back into the comments. Okay, so the Tholians is a lot here. Yeah, let's take away the ships real quick. So it's a little hard to see sometimes because the colors, but the the distribution of bases is very consistent. 2 hexes along the hexagonal axis, sort of the hexagonal cardinal points. And we can see they got specifically two YDKs that are built. One over that wormhole that goes to Hydron space. And the second, which was near the Hydron planet that they stomped. I wonder if this is telegraphing something about their relationship with the Hydrons in the future. Regardless, we also have two... this is going to be interesting. So we have a ISC planet that is currently being discussed, being wooed, shall we say, with a diplomat here in Lima 29. And based on the fact that they're happy, I expect that they will integrate into the Tholian economy shortly. That's a 3 EP planet. That's going to pop them to 41. They're going to be the first economy to hit the 40 mark. That's going to be significant. 2, they also have a medium planet, which is down here, which is the Kzinti. The Kzinti are currently unfriendly to the Tholians. We'll see how that goes. But that's a 4 EP planet when it's taken. So again, the Tholians are set up for some phenomenal economic success, and as has been telegraphed many times, in the late stage of the game, the Tholians are going to be very difficult to deal with. Basically, to get them off of wherever they are and make progress against them, because they're highly defensively oriented, it's going to be very difficult. So we'll see how that goes going forward, but yeah, that's going to be interesting. What are we seeing here, generally speaking? A continual push of exploration. Exploration freighters are continuing to explore on the west side. You can see some exploration activity continuing to happen on the east side. And then the majority of their exploration effort seems to be to the south. Cruisers to the south, exploration freighters to the south, again, cruisers. Now, this cruiser thing is interesting because it's a YR cruiser, a 3.6. I would be interested to see when the Tholians get their various technologies, because based on their economy, how much money they're making, and they have no conflict right now. They have no one's stirring the pot with them. They could be dumping a whole bunch of resources into R&D, which puts them in the long game way ahead of everybody. They are going to have, especially with this particular player who's very experienced, he's going to be very well positioned to kick butt and take names, shall we say. It'll be very interesting to see how that all works out. Now, with that said, I want to jump into the comments real quick, because there's a whole bunch of it going on that I got to catch up on here. Okay, so Daniel saying, ship acting as a supply node can connect to grids. I don't know if that's... Well, I'll have to check that out, because my understanding was that you can't. That, for example, a tug acting as a... So, for example, if you had a partial supply grid with a planet and then your main supply grid, you can't have an intermediary tug acting as an extended supply point to connect the two. My understanding that doesn't work, but I have to check that out. Keep in mind, Daniel is our GM, so at the end of the day, he has final say. So we'll see how that goes. Jim, looks like the Federation are on the move in game terms after a lackluster 10 or so turns, somewhat similar to what happened to the Hydrons. There was a wormhole in Kilo 17 and it disappeared a few turns ago. That would be why perhaps that base building pattern was a little sort of off on the Federation side. Again, wormholes appearing and disappearing. It's very interesting. Dale, looks like you were not following the historical map. You were using random start locations. Yes, Dale. So this is an open campaign, sort of 4X kind of game. This is a 4X game where we are expanding, exploring, exterminating, and exploiting resources, our enemies, our borders, and space in general. So yeah, this is a 4X game that we're using the Federation rule set to play. And as you can see, this is a... I wouldn't say a randomly generated map, but the resources, plants, and things like that are generated progressively as we explore and discover these fogged out hexes in the map. It's not a predetermined map, basically. Yeah, random map. Bill's saying, with rules for generating content in each hex. So basically what I just described. Bill's saying, going to pop the Orions, that should be 8th Fleet, not Home Fleet. Okay. And Jim saying that no one but the Hydrons listen to the voices of the gods when it speaks of the original heresy, the Tholians. So yes, we'll be very interested to see what the what's going on with the Tholians. So what did we see today? We saw that the Remans are very dangerous. Don't mess with the Remans. They got the biggest, baddest fleet in the game, and they are pushing their exploration and infrastructure to the west. So as they push west, we're going to see them potentially bump into the Lyrans, although based on the exploration pattern, it looks like that might be delayed for a while. So we'll see what happens there. The ISC have a big Juggernaut problem. How are they going to deal with that? We shall have to see. I'll be very interested to see what the IC player comes up with as a potential strategy to be able to find and solve and deal with those Juggernauts. In a previous game, while we didn't have Juggernauts, I had a swarm problem. A swarm being a special kind of monster that as it sort of attacks various targets, it grows and grows and grows. That swarm originally existed on the other side of a border with the other player. And I mean, they didn't exactly herd it towards me, but due to random movement, it crossed the border and became my problem, not his problem. I wonder if something similar might happen here with the Juggernauts. Would they be motivated or inclined to move in a direction towards the south and deal with the Hydrants? I don't know. Who knows? But if that became a problem that the Hydrants had to deal with, that would be interesting. Speaking of the Hydrants and the ISC, so we can see that the ISC are building up sort of some presence, at the very least, along the border with the Hydrants, and with those YTGs, the tugs, along the border, it would seem to telegraph that there's going to be some reinforcement of the border there. The Hydrants, by comparison, not really focused on that in the defense perspective. They are continuing to explore and expand their borders, really pushing, trying to... it would seem like just expand the borders, find more resources, and exploit those resources. That seems to be the strategy of the Hydrants, and they're continuing to do that very successfully. They are one of the strongest economies in the game. They are continuing to push without necessarily spending a lot of time and energy on reinforcing their borders, more just creating a more robust infrastructure on the western side of their territory versus the rest. We'll see how that evolves going forward. The Carnivons, yeah, the Carnivons are all about sucker punching the Klingons. They are focused, keeping in mind that the Carnivons are basically walking werewolves. They are on the hunt, that pack mentality. They are coming to get some from the Klingon Empire. Now, the Klingon Empire, as I've mentioned before, we play as the, inspired by Warhammer 40K's Alpha Legion. And so we are playing a game of information control, deception, and communication. So while the Carnivons are attacking us, we have to figure out a strategy that works best to be able to fight this two-front war. There's no way we can stop that Carnivon assault, at least in the short term. We'll see what happens as it comes forward. The Romulan side, however, is going very well. I wouldn't say going very well. The Romulans are certainly winning that engagement. However, some strategic things have occurred that are making it more advantageous for us. One, that YDK, which was a core sort of structural repair capacity point and logistical point for the Romulans, crippled and compromised. How is that going to result or affect things going forward? We shall have to see. But we can see that there is a large number of Klingon ships on that border, and what's going to happen? Only time will tell. Federation has decided to pop into Federation space through that wormhole, which is great. A, because we get to exchange maps and the whole map becomes one big kahuna burger, and we finally have a wormhole in Klingon space, which means there is the potential to be able to do some research and development on wormhole tech and start to leverage that as a capability going forward. We look at the Gorn. The Gorn and the Romulans getting along very, very nice. I would expect there's going to be some, they've got some R&D going back and forth as far as the R&D teams going to each other's capitals to be able to exchange R&D tech or work on R&D tech together. The Romulans, It looks like they're focusing most of their energy and effort and economy on the conflict with the Klingons. The Gorn, on the other hand, everything's slow and steady, wins the race. Their economy continues to grow. They are now in the sort of the meat of the pack when it comes to their economy. They're continuing to expand and explore their borders, and they're building out their fleet in the Y era, which is finally when they start to build some ships that have some kind of punch. Those W era ships for the Gorn, very, very weak, but as they move through the different eras, Y, M, and GW, they are going to get more and more dangerous. Just watch. The Gorn are a vicious GW faction or late M faction. Watch out. We'll see how that develops. As we saw with the Tholians, they are continuing to dominate this game, regardless of what you want to think about where the conflicts are. They are the biggest economy. They have the potential to continue to grow to be the biggest economy. They have no threats against them. They are very stable, very secure, and they are by far, from my perspective, the biggest threat in the game. Not today, not tomorrow, but in a couple turns' time, as they move forward, they are going to annihilate everybody. They're going to be a behemoth, a rolling boulder down the hill that we won't be able to stop because they will have so much momentum. There's going to have to be something done about that at some point. Otherwise, they're going to win the game. The Federation continue to explore and expand their borders and leveraging their ability to be able to build that nice, robust base network in response to encountering the Lyrans, who are continuing to explore their own without as much infrastructure being built, because, of course, there's only so much you can build with the resources that you have. But they are continuing to really push that exploration on and on and on. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Basically, as I mentioned before, the west side of the map is peaceful, tranquil, and cooperative. The east side of the map is the opposite. It is a hub of villainy and piracy. It is a concentration of conflict. There is rising tensions on various borders. There are massive fleets waiting, itching to get into a fight. And there are factions that are struggling or clawing at each other to be able to gain ground and survive. How is this all going to wash out in the end? What is the result of this campaign? You'll have to find out as you subscribe, hit that like button, and follow us as we go forward in this campaign, assuming this is something that you like, because it's going to be exciting as we move forward. Is all things Star Trek strategy turn-based? Are these things that you enjoy? If so, please consider supporting the channel with either a coffee, as we've received a couple during this broadcast. Thank you so much for everybody who has tried to keep this gentleman caffeinated. As well as, excuse me, as well as supporting us on Patreon. We have Patreon supporters. We have reorganized, rejigged that Patreon framework, and we are looking forward to seeing you in our Discord channel as a Patreon supporter and or a coffee supporter. Either one, pick your flavor. You head over to one of those links and you can support us at the channel. Looking forward to seeing how this campaign goes forward, because I tell ya, it's going to get exciting. Are the Klingons going to be able to come back after that huge knockout punch from the Carnivons? Are the Romulans overextended? Are they going to suffer some kind of fatal flaw? Are the Remans going to drop the hammer? And which nail are they going to hit? And what's going to happen with that silent but violent Tholian faction that is just building in the background? Who's going to deal with them? Who's going to poke that bear? Who is going to stir that pot? I can think of only one cook in that kitchen. The Hydrons and that crazy theocracy that they got going on are perfectly suited to get into that cooking condition. So, what do you think is going to happen? I would love to see your comments below in the comments of this video. And of course, seeing this wonderful, amazing community of ours in the chat, going back and forth, setting things back and forth. Thank you so much for Dale for joining us and showing interest in getting involved in the game. That is the entire purpose and intent of this show. This community is all about building a focal point for people who like to play turn-based strategies, things Star Trek, and all things sci-fi, that you enjoy Federation and Empire. And we are building a player base here for this game so that we can all enjoy, have fun, and at the end of the day, just have a good time. Because that, at the end of the day, is the focus of what we're doing here. We're trying to create a community of folks that like to enjoy playing these kind of strategy games and just have fun together. So if that's something that sounds good to you, think about hitting that subscribe button, following us along, especially if you've lasted this long in the show. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you next time in our live stream next Saturday. Every Saturday at 11 o'clock Pacific time, we'll see you here live on YouTube, on Twitch, and, although not today, on Facebook Live due to a technical issue. But looking forward to seeing you next week live on this show. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.